My name is Don Jones, and my wife and I have resided and own a house in the Little Holmby area for approximately about the last 15 years. Like others in our community, I was shocked to learn about the things that could happen if an HPOZ were passed, adopted, for over 1,000 homes in the proposed Holmby Westwood HPOZ. So I joined numerous others in the groundswell that is happening in our community to stop adoption of an HPOZ. Just to be clear, we are not against adoption of the city's proposed baseline anti-Mansonization ordinance. Some of you know that as the BMO. Once that is passed, it will prevent overbuilding and it will prevent Mansonization, not only in our neighborhood, but in many neighborhoods. So that is clear, we have no problem with that. We'll be taking questions later, so please forgive me. What we are against is the imposition of an HPOZ with unnecessary restrictive zoning changes that will have permanent and adverse consequences for our neighborhood. And I want to stress that from my understanding of the ordinance, if the HPOZ is passed, it will be permanent and almost impossible to undo. We feel it's imperative for everybody in our community to learn information about how the HPOZ will negatively impact our community. At the same time, we want to dispel all the false information being spread about regarding the alleged benefits of an HPOZ. We're fortunate tonight to have Ben Reznik to talk about the proposed HPOZ. Ben is a partner at the law firm of Jeffer Mangels, Butler, and Mitchell, and is a preeminent land use attorney in Southern California. After Ben speaks, we also have a few of your fellow homeowners who will speak a relatively short time to give you some more information. After that, we will open up for questions for Ben, and assuming that we have sufficient time, we will take all questions. But should anyone need to leave, or if there isn't sufficient time, you can also submit your questions to our email address, which is littleholmbymember@outlook.com. And if you want to write it down, I'll repeat it. It's littleholmbymember@outlook.com. If you do submit questions to that email address, somebody in our group will get back to you as soon as possible with a response. You are not alone. Many hundreds of your fellow homeowners are rising up to stop adoption of an HPOZ in our community. But to make an HPOZ go away, to have it never pass for our community, we need the support of all of you and all of the people that you know in our community that, like us, do not want an HPOZ passed for our community. So help us by talking to your neighbors, either in person, by phone, by email. Get out the information. Let them understand, like you will learn tonight, what an HPOZ means to our community. And hopefully, with that additional groundswell, we can have a tremendous number of people who are going to be there to help stop an HPOZ from being adopted. It's our intent that the petitions that many of you have seen and signed already will be presented to our city council person, which is Paul Koretz, in an effort to get Paul to also help stop the adoption of an HPOZ. But that alone may not be sufficient. And in order to increase our chances of blocking or the adoption of an HPOZ, we need to let the city know that we are opposed. There are going to be a number of meetings that take place between now and the eventual date by which it's submitted to the city. I think it's in February that it's submitted to the city council for vote. There are going to be planning meetings, planning commission meetings, where you'll have information given to you and you'll be given an opportunity to speak and voice your opinion as to whether or not you are in favor of an HPOZ in the Holmby Westwood area. We implore you to attend those meetings, to voice your concerns about the HPOZ, because the city will listen if enough of us are there to tell them what we feel. At the back of the room behind us is a table. We have extra petitions, and we are hoping that many of you will take those petitions, and if you haven't already signed, please do if you are also against an HPOZ, and there'll be somebody there to hand it to, but also to take extra ones with you so that you can talk to your neighbors. This is a large, large neighborhood, over 1,000 homes. We have a groundswell of people who are against an HPOZ, but that doesn't mean that everybody is going to help in this endeavor. But if you do help, you will increase our numbers, and as we increase our numbers, we increase our strength. So we obviously would like you to do that. And also I think there is going to be a help sheet back there, and that help sheet will be voluntary, so that if you want to help out by doing as little as canvassing your streets and knocking on doors with petitions in hand, or other things that we may have need for in the future that we haven't really defined yet because we don't know what we need to do to get this done yet, we would like you to sign up, and we will get in touch with you and become part of the ever-increasing group size that we have that is trying to fight this HPOZ. Ben Reznik is chair of his firm's Government, Land Use, Environment, and Energy Department. His practice emphasizes real estate development, entitlements, zoning, and environmental issues, including frequent appearances before city planning commissions, city councils, and other governmental boards and agencies. Curb LA, which is Los Angeles' most respected, widely read real estate and land use blog, once described Ben as the most powerful lobbyist in Los Angeles. We are very privileged to have Ben join us here to talk about our HPOZ, so I would like all of us to welcome him now.
Hi, good evening. My name is Ben Reznik. I'm here with a colleague, Daniel Friedman, who's standing up here in the gray suit. He's a land use lawyer in my department. Some of your neighbors had contacted us about a week or so ago, mainly because we currently represent quite a few people who live in this community in general, so there was a natural connection, and indicated to us they were surprised about this, asked if we would be willing to come to an evening just to explain what's going on. And so that's what Daniel and I are here to do, is just basically explain what's going on. I'm not here to tell you to support it or not support it. I'm here to tell you what the implications are. If there is an HPOZ, answer your questions, and then you can decide for yourself. First, I think we should start with some housekeeping. The actual preservation plan, draft plan, that the planning department is drafting for your community, called the Holmby Westwood plan, will be up tomorrow on the city's website. It's not out yet. So if you go to the city's planning department website, it's basically preservation.lacity.org/Holmby Westwood. But once you get to that website, you'll see that some of the other communities, you can click on that. Hopefully they'll have it on, and you can actually read the actual plan or what's being proposed. The other housekeeping things I wanted you to know right up front, in case any of you have to depart earlier, are the critical dates that are coming up. So the first date, there'll be an informational open house, just informational in nature, and that will be July 14th, 7 p.m., and it does not tell me where. At St. Albans too? Okay. Then, 2 weeks later, on Thursday, July 28th, again, I know now it's St. Albans, will be at 6 p.m. An open house where you can ask questions of staff. And And by 7 p.m., they'll start a public hearing, an official public hearing, where people get to come and comment and testify. So you get a chance to come and give your opinions to the planning department staff about the draft proposal they've put out, what you like, what you don't like, and about the whole concept. There'll be a hearing officer. They'll be taking notes and comments because it's their job to consolidate all of the information and prepare a report that's going to go to the next level, which is going to be 2 levels actually. The next level will be August 11th is the date we've been given for the Cultural Heritage Commission hearing, and they will make a recommendation to the City Planning Commission, which would be the following week, which is August 16th. So it actually moves quite fast. By August 16th, if the City Planning Commission approves the proposal, then it moves on to the City Council. Whoops, sorry. Forgot about that. Moves on to the City Council. We don't have any dates for that, of course. And so that's the timeline you need to be aware of. Of course, if you can't appear at any of these, you can submit letters, write comments. All of that is taken into consideration. That's the housekeeping. So what is the HPOZ, Historical Preservation Overlay Zone? Basically, it's its own animal or creature, if you will, of regulations that will pertain to a particular area that's being designated by boundaries. In your case, you sort of know your boundaries. It's Hillgard to Beverly Glen, Sunset down to, how far south does it go? Wilshire. And it's a set of regulations that are specific to this community, to this neighborhood, and it ties also in with the procedures that the city has for all HPOZs, all historic preservation overlay zones. And in a nutshell, because I don't want to sit here and dissect it all and get into specifics and all, I think what you want is the 30,000-foot view of what this means. So the city will have done some sort of a historical survey on this, and they will identify certain properties within this area as contributing factors and certain properties as non-contributing factors. And what the distinction basically means is the level of scrutiny one may have to go through when you make any changes to your home. And I'm going to explain sort of what that means. But whether you're a contributing or whether you're a non-contributing house, you're subject to a review process no matter what you want to do. So by way of example, a project is defined in the Historical Preservation Overlay Zone as not necessarily something that requires a building permit. It just may be something like changing exterior paint color, removal of significant trees, or landscaping. So landscaping is considered part of your historical impact. Installation or removal of fencing, replacement of windows or doors. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is if you wanted to add to your home, and it's more than 250 square feet, because there's some easier threshold if you're less than 250 square feet, you're going to have to go through a review process with the city. You are not allowed to just go get a building permit, as you are today, to say, okay, I want to do an extension to my house. I want to build a second story. I want to add to the back. You will have to go through a process. And in a nutshell, what that process will be is you're going to have to demonstrate to the city that what you're doing to the home will not detract or negatively impact the entire community's historical significance as a community. How do you do that? Well, you're going to need to most likely get an architectural historian or an architect who can explain that to the city. There'll be an application process. The application will first go to a local board. I'll discuss that in a minute. A board created in your community under your own plan. That board will review your project and make a recommendation to the Director of Planning. That application will also go to the Cultural Heritage Commission, which meets downtown LA during the day. Daniel has appeared there many times. When did they start, like 10? So that's when you have to show up. And it'll go through their review as to whether or not what you're proposing is consistent, compatible with the historical preservation plan that the city will have adopted for your neighborhood. So when they adopt the plan for your neighborhood, what the plan lays out is sort of the goals, but also the kinds of visions the city has, the kind of architectural integrity, the historical integrity of the neighborhood. And based on those kinds of findings, they're going to decide if what you're doing is consistent or not. So when you're done with the Cultural Heritage Commission, then the Director of Planning issues a certificate of some sort. It's either going to be a certificate of appropriateness or a compatibility certificate. That depends on whether you are a contributing or non-contributing asset to the community. The thresholds are slightly different, but the process is the same. The director makes a recommendation. So let's say you get an approval. That approval is not final until a 15-day appeal period expires. Anybody can appeal it. Statutes always talk about an aggrieved person, but that could be anybody in the city, not necessarily a person in your community. And the reason for that, mind you, is because a historical preservation overlay zone, remember, is an entire area that is being planned for the benefit of the citizens of LA. The goal is to preserve a historical neighborhood. So it's not just your interests and how you think it should be. Anybody outside the area can also appeal a decision. The appeal goes to the Area Planning Commission. There's a West LA Area Planning Commission. They would hear that appeal. They will decide whether you get to do what you want to do or you don't get to do what you want to do. If you don't get to do what you want to do, in our experience, oftentimes you got to go back, you got to make changes. What they won't tell you is, if you do this, this, or that, we'll approve it. That's usually the problem. So it's sometimes a guessing game. But the Area Planning Commission makes a decision. And then you're still not done, because that's appealable to City Council. So potentially, someone who wants to change the exterior of the paint on their house, if it's not approved all the way up the line, somebody thinks your paint is different than what it was before or doesn't match the community's integrity, you are subject to all these levels of appeal. Now, I'm not exaggerating, that's the way it is. If you go through the entire process and you ultimately get an approval, if you are appealed all the way by someone, by the way, oftentimes in our experience, it's an unhappy neighbor who's the one that's the thorn in your side. That neighbor now has leverage that he wouldn't otherwise have. In other words, he might think that your house is too big, or he doesn't want to see a second story, or he thinks you're blocking the sunlight. And there's no other rule or regulation for him to exercise to stop you from doing it. This gives that to that neighbor, right? So, if you get through all of your appeals, assuming you are appealed all the way, then you have now probably spent the better part of a full year trying to get through that. Because at every level there's an appeal time, there's a notice hearing, and when they schedule you. That's just reality and fact. Now, if you don't get your permit, you have a choice. At the end of the day, you can try again, you can make changes, go back, or you can try to sue the city to say that the decision was arbitrary, the decision was not supported by evidence, and what have you. That's a tough lawsuit, by and large. You're asking a judge to second guess what a whole slew of review committees decided was inappropriate, right? So unless there's a procedural mishap, a court is not likely to set it aside, but you have that right. Conversely, if you get approval, your neighbor has a right to appeal, to go to court and say that that was a bad decision, that the decision is flawed, and raise that case. What does that do? Well, if a neighbor sues you in court, the city's policy usually has been, if we've approved you, you get your building permit, the city won't stop you. At that point, only a court may stop you, but they may not. But you can continue to do your work under a risk. The risk being that at the end of the day, if a court decides that there was an error made in the process, or that, yes, that the city made an error and reverses the city's decision and sends it back for correction, then the work you've done may or may not be proper. So there's a risk. The problem with the court system is delay, right? Again, if you file to get these cases heard, at best it takes 8-9 months to get a court to hear a case like that. It's called a petition for a writ of mandate. It's not a normal lawsuit. It's just, the individual sues the city, names you, the applicant, as what's called the real party in interest, because it's your application, and that could take another many, many months. The average in LA County is about 8-9 months to get through that process, and thousands and thousands of dollars of legal fees and costs. At the far-fetched end of this spectrum, somebody, once a court issues a decision, that's further appealable to a court of appeal. But let's not even think about that. That's like, it's possible. But it all emanates and all starts at the beginning with an HPOZ, which provides that platform for someone to argue and say, all right, now you've got to meet all of these criteria. And if you don't meet all these criteria, we can object, we can make you change it, etc. So the reason there are quite a few HPOZs in the city now, just so you know. About 28 or 29, something like that, I think. And they're not, they function. Not everyone is always happy with the result. It depends who you are and what you're trying to process. But for people who like to keep the neighborhood the way it is, kind of minimize any changes, keep a status quo, this works well, this helps them. So I assume there may be people in Holmby Westwood who like the way it looks and want to minimize any changes. Then they would support an HPOZ because it gives you a lot of leverage, a lot of tools to use to stop people from doing various other things. Now, as Don mentioned, one of the motivations around the city for a lot of the anger, if you will, are these McMansions, right? These huge homes being built on smaller parcels where they kind of dominate over a neighbor. The city has passed various ordinances. Most of you know that as the baseline mansionization ordinance. And they're still tinkering with modifications to that to try to keep people from being able to overbuild on a parcel, right? They want to now create limitations on square footage, on height, on setbacks and all. So that is in the works and that's there. But for maybe some people, that's just not enough. They see an HPOZ as an opportunity to really make it much more prohibitive and restrictive. So, for example, if you have a home and you happen to be a contributing factor, let's say, in the survey, you have a beautiful home from 1920s or 30s or 40s, you want to add a second story? Unlikely. I don't know how finding might be made to support that. Maybe, maybe not. We have Amanda Kyler here today from PCR. PCR is an engineering firm, land use consulting firm. She is an architectural historian. We asked her to come tonight she's volunteering her time tonight, as we are, to be informative. But when we run into these cases where we have somebody calling us up and says, gosh, they're going to designate my home historical, I don't believe it's historical, it's being done so I can't develop it, make changes, remodel, demolish, any of that. And if we want to fight against that, we can't do it alone as lawyers. All we can argue are legal procedures and legal findings. We have to retain and tell the client to retain Amanda's firm, who does the actual analysis of the merits of the historical aspects of a home. So in this case, you'd be having to hire her firm or somebody like that to be able to advise you as to whether what you want to do with your home is going to be consistent or compatible with the HPOZ in your area. And then you start going down the path. So let's talk a second about the board. There will be a board, a local board. It will be made up of 5 members. 3 of the 5 have to be residents in the area, but not necessarily owners. They can be renters. Yeah, that's in the ordinance. So as long as they qualify as residents in the area, 3 of them have to be in the neighborhood. Now, 1 is appointed by the mayor, 1 is appointed by the councilman of the district. That would be Councilman Paul Koretz. 2 of them are appointed by the Cultural Heritage Commission. And then the 4 members appoint the 5th member. And that board will be your starting place for any application you go through. They'll meet once a month. They'll agendize your item. You'll have to wait to get on the agenda, and the time starts going very slowly. But that's the process. Now, let's see if there are a couple of more items before I open it up. So, so if you are involved, if you're so lucky as to be designated a contributing element to the historical overlay zone, that means your house has been determined to be especially notable or contributing to the area's historical values. Now remember, I'm not just talking about architectural styles. You have different architectural styles in Holmby Hills. We're talking about just the historical context. The various aspects of significance can include who was master builders, who lived there, things of that nature, what it provided for. So if you are a contributing element, then you can't demolish. The city's HPOZ specifically says no certificate of appropriateness shall be issued to demolish, remove, or relocate any building, structure, landscaping, means whatever your existing landscaping is, it comes into play, natural feature within a preservation zone that is designated as a contributing element. And the application shall be denied unless the owner can demonstrate to the Area Planning Commission, that would be on an appeal, that the owner would be deprived of all economically viable use of the property. Those are magic words taken out of a famous U.S. Supreme Court case dealing with the takings under the Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, where if the government deprives you of any right to use your land, it has in effect taken your property. But one of the standards is that you have to show that you have lost all economically viable uses. That's impossible to prove. Because at the end of the day, you still have a home that somebody can rent, you can live in, and has value. So that's the criteria. So I think the message is simply that you can ask questions. I think you should be asking the city a lot of questions. But now let me get to sort of the action point. And since the premise of the meeting It's been organized by a group of your neighbors who volunteered to put it together, who are opposed to this. My advice is that if you want to stop this, you have to stop it at the political stage, at the front end stage. Because once the city council adopts it, going to court is a very difficult challenge. Because the only way a court would set aside the city's adoption of an HPOZ is if there were some procedural errors, in which case the court would send it back and say, do it right. But a court's not in a position to second guess a city council, because the action taken is what we call in the field a legislative action. It requires the city to adopt an ordinance. They are making legislative findings, meaning that they're acting in the best interest of the city as a whole. They're looking at public policy. They're looking at these very broad standards. And so if there is a serious effort to stop this, you've got to stop it at the city council. How do you do that? Many of you are sophisticated, you're politically active, you know what to do, but the key for that is going to be Councilman Paul Koretz, who is the councilman for this area. And this plan is being proposed or initiated by the city, I'm assuming with his consent, because there's no way the planning department would start and go down this far without the councilman's consent. And so that is your challenge if you're looking to oppose it. If you like it and you want to support it, then you can come to the hearings and say it's a great idea. And so with that, I think I'm going to end, Don, for a second.
Ben will be back to answer your questions. Obviously, as you can tell, he's extremely knowledgeable in this area. He definitely, for those of us that are opposed to this, is definitely a terrific asset, and we are glad that he accepted our invitation to be here. We have just two other speakers that are fellow homeowners of our community that will take a very short time to give some of their own thoughts about how they feel about the proposed HPOZ. So bear with us, we'll have them talk, and then I'll open it up to questions for Ben. So first is going to be Earl Goldstein. Earl, you're way back there. Come on up.
My name is Earl Goldstein. I've been a resident of Holmby Westwood since... How's this? Better? I've been a resident of Holmby Westwood since 1983. First on Malcolm Avenue. Then in late 98, my wife and I bought a 2,250 square foot home built in 1952 on Whiten Drive. Under the proposed HPOZ, it would have been classified as minimal traditional or ranch, and that is what it would have to stay forever. It was an ugly, nondescript house, but it was on a beautiful lot and had a wonderful view. We had an AIA architect team draw plans for a new 3,500 square foot house in a Cape Cod style. We submitted our plans for the building to the building department, and we began construction in April of '99. 8 months later, we moved into our new home. Nothing in the scenario I just described would have been possible under the proposed HPOZ, and that's why I'm here today to oppose the ordinance. The ordinance I found online. We all can find it and read it. The first time I read it was late at night, and it gave me a headache, and I couldn't get through it. So I read it again the next day when I was fresh, and it is extremely confusing, obfuscatory. It's a tough thing to read.
No, it's not the citywide ordinance, which is a guidance for all other HPOZs.
And there's the Holmby Westwood proposed ordinance, just to give you an idea of some of the things that Ben was speaking about. It talks about the styles of houses. It includes 1- and 2-story single-family homes constructed primarily in the late 20s through the 1950s that were predominantly designed in one of the period revival styles popular at the time. Half of them exhibit the American colonial revival or Spanish colonial revival. The remaining residents from the period are a diverse mix of other periods revival style, including Tudor revival, Monterey revival, Mediterranean revival, French Norman revival, neoclassical, as well as more modern styles such as minimal traditional, ranch, and mid-century modern. So that pretty much covers the neighborhood. I don't want to spend too much time here, but I just want to say, I wrote a whole 3-page thing, but I'm not going to take your time on that. I oppose it, and I think the more we learn about it, the more angry people will get, and I think we all should remember that there is an opposing side to this, and that opposing side has tried to demonize us from the beginning, and I think will continue to do so. So it's not, the first thing we're going to have to do is get enough signatures to show how many of us are opposed to it. We've been in existence about 2 weeks now, and we have over 300 signatures. But we want to get at least 500. So all I can say is please tell your neighbors, please leave your emails at the front, because we're not going to get all the emails from the HWPOA. They're certainly not going to cooperate with us. But if we can show the groundswell, show the neighborhood is opposed to this in great number, we will be able to get the aid of our councilmen and also the rest of the city council. Thank you.
I actually want to only correct one thing that Earl said. We don't want 500 signatures, we want 1,000. The last speaker will be Bettina O'Mara. Bettina?
I have lived in my home for 22 years. I live on Thayer. And my neighbors have asked me why I care about the HPOZ. I did a remodel 10 years ago, and my home is pretty much at its max square footage. Anyone could move into my home today and do absolutely nothing. So it's true. It shouldn't affect me at all. However, if my neighbors on my street would like to upgrade their home because they haven't bothered yet doing a remodel, they're waiting, they won't be able to do it. So they would possibly have to take a pretty large cut in what they would sell their home for. So when they take a hit so that they can get out of their home, this affects me. Why would someone pay over market value for my home when all they have to do is show the homes in the neighborhood that didn't sell? I have a neighbor behind me who bought a one-story home to retire in. His plan was to build a tasteful, nice second story. They could do a master suite retreat, tasteful and updated, and now he can't do it. And he'll have to possibly lose money on what he bought that home for. I was asked to come up here and speak on behalf of the real estate agents who live in our neighborhood. They have been vilified by the board of the homeowners for speaking out, and they would like to stay anonymous rather than continue to have their names dragged through the mud. This is quite a few people that just said they just can't speak. The realtors, whether they own their homes in the area, as several on the board, or just sell in the neighborhood, they're in the unique position to understand the impact of the building restrictions such as the ICO and the HPOZ on home values. According to the local realtors and many recent home sellers, there's no question that the current ICO restriction and the proposed HPOZ have significantly suppressed values, and that the imposition of the HPOZ will continue to keep our values lower than they would without an HPOZ. In addition, agents had observed and noted a broad lack of understanding throughout the neighborhood as to the nature and the details of what an HPOZ will mean. And mind you, we have been told that it will change and that there's been surveys that it will change and increase our values. We actually spoke to the city and have an email which will go online where they said there has been no research, there has been no survey, so there is no proof about any values. Despite the claims from proponents that studies have been done to increase it, no study has been produced to demonstrate it. Adding significant restrictions on building and development of land does not increase value, it always decreases value. The HPOZ will make building and development more difficult, time-consuming, and expensive, and will in many cases prevent homeowners from fully utilizing their properties. An HPOZ will prevent homeowners from building appropriate, properly scaled homes because of the need to preserve some features of their home that an outside body has deemed historical. This will be true for remodeling as well as building new, which is almost will never be allowed. Real estate agents have a fiduciary duty when representing buyers and sellers. This means they must be truthful and present all facts that are material and relevant to the value of a property. Realtors are some of the most knowledgeable and informed individuals when it comes to the understanding of the HPOZ and are at ground zero when it comes to what is happening with property values. As the brokers that in many cases make transactions happen, they are supporters and creators of the value of our community. They are patrons of our school, the July 4th picnic, and have nothing to gain by speaking out against an HPOZ. That is why it is particularly disturbing that the homeowner board has bullied and demonized many of the local professional agents, calling them fearmongers because they are truthful in expressing a negative opinion about the HPOZ. Targeting of individuals and homeowners that are against the HPOZ should have no place in our homeowners association that's supposed to represent the entire Holmby Westwood community. Thank you.
Thanks, Bettina. So we are going to open it up to questions for Ben. I know a lot of you have questions. We're going to try to get to as many as we can. I'll call on people as soon as Ben finishes answering each question. But again, if anybody has questions that aren't answered tonight and they think about something later on or they have to leave early, please submit those questions to our email address, which again is littleholmbymember@outlook.com. Yeah, we're also going to have a Facebook page which you can go on to get information that we'll be providing it. Bettina, I don't know the name, so let them know. Tell them what it's going to be.
There is a Facebook page for information, video, the speeches that happened tonight. It's the Westwood Holmby Homeowners Against the HPOZ. You can search it on Facebook, and things will be posted so that questions can come through there as well, but all this information will be posted. I think Ben's going to take as many questions as he can. But again, it's question answer. This is just for information.
Thanks.
All right, so we're going to take questions. I'm going to start at the back, the gentleman in yellow. Can you speak up, sir?
All right, I heard the question. The question is, who is supporting this? I don't know. Okay, so let me answer this. That's a good question. Who initiated this? So there are two ways to initiate an HPOZ. It can be done by property owners themselves, or the city can initiate it. If property owners wanted to initiate it, you need 75% of the property owners to consent to initiate an HPOZ if it's started by a neighborhood. But if the city decides to initiate it, there's no such threshold requirement of any percentage. And so even if only 10% support it, a city could initiate it. And that's what's happening here. Is this is city initiated.
Let me just say, hold on 1 second, please. Hold on, please. Well, you'll be called on. One of the things that our group is trying to find out is, in fact, how it got initiated. Some people say that it was initiated back some 8 or 10 years ago, or maybe less than that, but that it was initiated through the Homeowners Association gathering sufficient signed approvals and consents to do it. A lot of people, I don't know whether that's true or not, a lot of people I've talked to said they were never asked whether or not they wanted to be in an HPOZ, but that doesn't really matter at this point. The key question is there an HPOZ being proposed? If there is, and there definitely is, and if it's in the works before the city, and it definitely is, we need to do something about it and not worry about how it got there. Yes, ma'am.
My question has to do with the neighborhood oversight board that will be put in place, the 5 individuals. If you don't get out of that committee, if you're denied by that
So, as I indicated, no, the neighborhood does not pick those 5 people. The mayor picks one, the councilman picks one, Cultural Heritage Commission picks 2 of them, and the 4 of them pick the 5th. So as a neighborhood, no, you don't get to vote on it and pick them. If they don't like your project or recommend, I mean, sometimes they'll work with you and your architect in a give and takes. They come back, make these changes. It's sort of like an architectural review board process. You know, you go back and forth and you try to satisfy. That's what most people try to do, because nobody wants to have to keep going through appeals and appeals. But at some point, you have a right to demand of the city to just make a decision. Because the decision on whether or not you're compatible or whether or not you get a certificate of appropriateness or not is vested in the director of planning. And so you have at some point a right to do that. Now, the Cultural Heritage Commission also reviews your plans, not just the board. So, you know, if you get denied by them as well, you have a right at some point to say, I want the director to act. So the question is the director going to approve your project if your local board disapproves it and the Cultural Heritage Commission disapproves it? Unlikely. And so you're going to have to keep trying to work it, most likely. Because at the end of the day, if you get denied by the director and you appeal it to the area planning commission, again, you're going in with a very weak hand because you've been denied by everyone. So either satisfy them or comply, or be prepared to go through a very long appeal route and probably lose at the end of the day.
Okay, there's been a hand up for a long time. I'm going to go there first. Very loud, please.
Two-pronged question. First, other than signing the petition, what else can we do as homeowners to try to oppose this? And second, how organized is the group that's trying to oppose it? What else as homeowners do they need from us to help them oppose it?
So the first thing you should do if you're opposed to this is call the councilman in the morning. Leave messages, send emails, and bombard that office with calls. They have not heard from this community at large. They only know what I think they've dealt with the Holmby Westwood Homeowners Association. You can contact the association. I think their president is here tonight. You can call them. You can ask for a meeting with your homeowners association. Come to your homeowners association and ask them to reconsider some of your positions and take that into consideration, because that may be an easier way to be able to end this. If that doesn't work, then you're just going to need to put political pressure, I think, on your councilman. That's the reality. Convince him that a huge proportion of people don't want this, and then it becomes a political call.
Let me answer your second question, which is a fair enough question. A small group of us, in hearing about this, we're talking, got together one night and said, this is crazy. What are we doing here? And we got together and I would say we're now probably a group of 10 or 11 or 12 people that have tried in only a couple weeks to put together notices, petitions, flyers, and a meeting like this, which we're happy to see that it looks like this room holds, I think, 175 people. I think we have well over 200 people here, and we thank you for coming. But it is hard when we all have to pedal on this thing from behind and catch up. And Ben is correct. We need petitions. We need to get petitions. We need to get before Paul Koretz, and we will do that the best we can with your help. But you can also help by getting on the phone and calling and emailing Mr. Koretz and his office and saying no HPOZ for Holmby Westwood.
One signature per home?
Yeah.
One signature per home?
Look, the reality is
No, you can have multiple. The question was, is you limited at one signature per home? No, husband and wife can each sign a petition objecting to it, absolutely.
Yeah, you can have separate petitions. Gentleman way in the back.
You guys are against it. We have a person that's signed. We're asking people to sign petitions, but they haven't heard them sign. I don't think it's fair to both sides. And then instead of voting,
Well, I hear what you're saying, but there were several meetings of the homeowners association at which they presented people telling you, those that were interested and that was there, why they believed that. Can I finish, sir? Yes. Yeah. So there have been a lot of people, but you're welcome to go. I think that the best thing for anyone who is maybe on the fence, and maybe you are, maybe you're in favor of it, the best thing is go to the informational meetings at the planning department that they're going to have. They're going to tell you their side of the story as to what it is they think should be done and why they think it should be done. So there's going to be plenty of information out there that is going to be proffered out by other people.
Yes, you're right, we're trying to kill it.
Well, you're welcome to that opinion, but if somebody doesn't step up, then it can't happen. Yeah. Okay. Gentleman over here.
In light of how much inertia is already behind this, Ben, have you had any experience of seeing a community being able to stop something like this?
Danielle and I just did that in Sullivan Canyon a few months ago. At the beginning of the year. It was a different kind of district. It wasn't an HPOZ. It was, a movement in Sullivan Canyon that was already initiated at the state level to designate it a state historical area. And then a bunch of neighbors woke up and said, "Oh, we didn't know this was happening," and we got retained and we stopped it.
Can we retain you so you can stop this one?
Yes, you can. We take cash.
The lady over here, please.
It seems quite certain that if Koretz decided that he did not want the HPOZ, that would end it. Is that the case?
I'm quite certain. I've done this for 40 years, and there's no way an HPOZ gets passed over a councilman's objection if he doesn't want it.
The lady over there has glasses. Black.
No one's throwing anything back in this court. I'm not saying there's nothing on there is. First thing that Ben said was July 14th, go to the informational meeting. Get online like I did and read the whole ordinance. Go to the homeowners meeting and listen to the potential for the last 7 years they brought it up. So if you don't go to the homeowners meetings, you won't learn anything. First. Second, the POA supposedly sent out in the last 7 years, because I've only lived in the neighborhood 7 years, I feel so blessed to be in this neighborhood. I've made great friends. I love my neighborhood. But they sent out without proper explanation, and it was a vote and whatever. And I've been calling for the last 2 weeks, since my neighbor Bettina told me and made me more aware of this, that asking how many petitions, how many signatures do you have that you took to Paul Koretz's office? We have 1,100 homes. Did you take 551? I can't get an answer. So if we need 75%, whether you're for or against, whichever side needs 75%, we need 750 signatures. Not their homes, I wouldn't say signatures. So if, sir, you said you need to get to it early and get it done, where is that? In between the public hearing testifying part and the cultural heritage commission between July 28th and August 11th? Will you, if we have, whoever the we is, whoever side has, the 750 votes, will you walk into Paul Koretz's office then and say and present it on our behalf, whoever behalf is going to have that? And then that.
Okay, so let me answer the question this way. So we're clear here. Because this is being initiated by the city, and we don't know.
No, it's not being initiated by the city. It was initiated, we were all told it was initiated by the POA. I asked the POA.
Well, no, I can tell you the POA may have requested it. They may have lobbied for it.
When Sandy Brown is here, let's ask her how this
Yes.
happened. She's
Okay.
right
How did
here.
this
She
happen?
owes us
The
names.
president is
All right,
here.
she's here.
I would like to know how many households gave you a signature to start this. We're all here, we're all
We're all here to
communicating, let's
listen.
be honest. Let's put it on the forefront.
She's our president. Let's hear something from our president.
How does this get here?
You want to?
No, but I want honesty. I would like to, that's fine. I would like to know
Okay, so,
Wait, hold on a second. Hold on. Whether Sandy Brown wants to speak or not is her choice here. But listen, hold on. Let's understand the percentages and numbers. Right now, the percentages and numbers are not relevant. My understanding is this is city initiated, and your property owners association may have lobbied for it, and the board may have voted to support it, and they may have asked Paul Koretz to do it, and all of that. When the city initiates, there's no percentage of signatures required at all. And there's no percentage of signatures legally that kill it at all. It then becomes initiated, and either the city adopts it or they don't adopt it, which means that you need to get as much pressure or to Paul Koretz as possible to show him that a great majority of people don't want it. Then it's his choice, but you also have an opportunity to go to these hearings, speak against it, try to convince the Planning Commission not to approve it, for example. Planning Commission doesn't approve it, it goes to the City Council, they need a supermajority to override that. So there are other ways to do that, but I'm pretty sure that your homeowners association did not actually initiate, because in order for them to have initiated, they would have needed 75% of voters signing under oath in a petition that has been submitted, and many of you would have had to sign that.
Why don't we stop assuming and ask her herself? She's right there.
it doesn't, because the reality is it doesn't matter how it got before the city, although Ben is likely correct how it got there. What matters is what do we do to undo it?
Well, we need to find out the causation.
The gentleman right here.
Why do we have to take it for granted that the city has initiated this? We don't know who, we don't know when, we don't know why. Why do we have to start by taking that for granted, that it was done, let alone promptly?
Yeah, but because it doesn't change what you have to do. The reality is that it doesn't change the outcome. It's initiated, and I suspect that if 75% of people living within the boundaries we described signed this, many of you would have known. And therefore, we know that 75% did not. So the reality is it was initiated by the city. You can raise that. Okay. Then the city needs to have certified 75% of the property owners. We'll see that in the file. It has to be in the planning file that they process. So you'll get this gentleman. The answer to your question will be answered when we see the file.
Gentleman right over there.
Alan Gilbert. First of all, I'd like to thank you, John, and your colleagues for organizing this. This is all new to my wife, Renee, and myself. We've been residents in this area for 20 plus years. I am strongly opposed to this. You've made it clear, Ben's made it clear that at this point, the challenge for us is a political process, and we've got to get our voices, our collective voices before Koretz. Would you please provide everybody with the phone number and email for Koretz? I will be calling him tomorrow morning.
Daniel will get that for you as he's looking at it.
We'll give you that in a second, or a minute. Question. There were some people over here that want to talk. Lady right over here.
I want to know if our chances of overturning this are better. And I'm asking you, I want to know if having you represent us, if everybody, agrees to something like that, do we have a better chance of getting this done?
Yes, and I'll tell you why.
Was that a loaded question?
Gosh. And I did not pay this lady to ask that question. No, even though, look, there are two, you're going to be operating at two levels concurrently. If you're going to oppose this, you're going to organize, and you can organize politically. We had talked to your steering committee, let's call it a steering committee for now, about possibly maybe even retaining a professional firm that does community outreach, that organizes people, that makes sure that it's all happening. You can do that because honestly, it does take a lot of effort and coordination. But at the same time, because the city is processing this, and you want to be able to raise arguments as to why it doesn't fit a proper criteria, maybe. I don't know what the arguments might be. That's where we have to rely on experts like Amanda, who's here tonight, who's an architectural historian, to tell us, are there bases for which you can raise an argument that in the event the city passes it, and some of you want to challenge it, if you're going to think of challenging in court, you have to raise these arguments now before the city. Because whatever arguments are not raised now before the city are waived when you go to court. You can't raise them. So you can't save for later on. You have to decide now to create what we call a record, an administrative record. And so what we provide is we look at the procedural process, we look at the findings that the city's trying to adopt, we try to coordinate that. But I was being very frank and honest with you that the likelihood of success is more political, and it's the most expedient way of ending it. And if there's a tidal wave of reaction, I think in the next few weeks or right away, then I think the councilman may reconsider, because he's got to still look at what's in the interest of the overall community. Phone numbers. Are you ready? So this is for Mr. Koretz, 213. I feel like this is a big bingo game. 213-473-7005. 213-473-7005. And the email is pretty simple. It's paul.koretz, Koretz, at LACity, one word, lacity.org. Paul.koretz at lacity.org. Thanks, Daniel.
The lady back there wanted a question. Yes, ma'am.
Can I say something? Let's do this. Wait, let's do this. Right now, it's not really, we're all homeowners. There's 1,100 homeowners in the area. And what we have found is that most people, a lot of people are guilty of it. We do have a homeowners association that unfortunately, a lot of people, if you don't join, you don't get the information. We think we can change that. We should all have the information. Now that people are becoming aware, it's becoming obvious that a lot of people were just doing what a lot of us do, what I did. I don't feel like going and hearing about a 4th of July parade, so I don't go. I just don't go. Now, as this was getting closer and a few people brought it to our attention, it was like, wait, what's happening? So what happens now is we had a small group of people that said, can we test the water and see how many people know about this and want it? There are people going door to door and knocking on doors, and the first reaction is, what is an HPOZ? We haven't even heard about this. Once they are aware, they can make their own decision. The numbers are very clearly against doing an HPOZ. What I would ask you to do, it's not about finger pointing, it's not about they said it, they did it, it's about if we are against this, the time is very short to stop it. So, and I think explaining to the homeowners association, I think once they see that 1,000 homeowners, that if over 750 say, we don't want it, they will say, look, we're here for your benefit, they'll be on our side. But we do need help getting out there, knocking on doors, getting petitions signed, because in a very few days, we are going to get into court's office and say, there is 75% of the homeowners here in our hands or more that are against it. And I think we'll be fine. Ruth.
Okay, let me. Yeah. Please speak up. There's air conditioning vents by us. It's hard to hear.
There is a reason behind it. So let me first say that I am completely against making this louder.
Louder, please. Okay.
I'm a builder, so I deal with this every day. Okay, so let me just say that we do not want this to be an HPOZ. We do not. It will. Bettina is correct. it's gonna have a very bad effect on the prices of our houses and the value of them. But there is a problem all through LA. I understand. I know what you're gonna say, because I know that you're. Okay, well, let me just say that the real question of why people are reaching for an HPOZ is because of the historical, they think that the historical preservation equals architectural integrity. So many people are concerned with the architectural integrity of the neighborhood. They don't want the neighborhood to turn into, Santa Monica, where these houses that are on postage stamp lots are overbuilt, the height, they're crazy, the architecture's nuts. People love our neighborhood and they want to protect the neighborhood. So the intention behind this was maybe correct, but misguided. I think that you're 100% correct. We do not want to have to go to all those levels of the city. You're never going to get anything done. But I just want to say that the thing is that we need to stop this, but maybe perhaps the answer is in our own board to have a design review. There are places in LA that there's a design review.
Yeah, one of the things that everybody needs to know is that the homeowners board does not control all homes in our area. A lot of homes are not subject to that board, so that's not going to work. The gentleman way over there.
Okay, so I agree with this lady that the intentions behind it is honorable, the intentions. And my understanding from attending many of the meetings that led to this effort right now is that the HPOZ can be crafted to the level that we want it to be.
No.
Excuse me, let me finish. And
Ben can speak to that.
And our intention has been to protect the integrity of the ambiance of this beautiful neighborhood. So my specific question is this, and this has been my understanding so far, that we can craft it the way we want it. So, can it be that we can design the HPOZ in such a way that whether it's a contributing building or not, whether we want to demolish the property or not, or we want to add to it or not, can it be that those things can be allowed as long as the finished product is in line with the ambience of the existing neighborhood?
So the gentleman is right. Yeah, the gentleman is right that each neighborhood can have an HPOZ with criteria in it. I'm not aware of a single one that allows demolitions. So you'd be forging new ground to deal with that. And I understand what you're saying, but keep in mind, even with your model, where you would allow demolition, you would allow revisions, you would allow modifications, you said but. And the but is the end product still has to be approved by the board, by cultural heritage, appealable to the area planning commission and ultimately the city council. So you're still going to end up with some subjective review as to the final product. And so, yeah, it would be a lot better if you had the right to demolish and the right to change and the right to do various things and add. But then I think you'll find an argument that says, then why bother? So, yeah, Daniel wants me to remind you all that you don't have a lot of time this is going to the Planning Commission in August. When they act on it, it goes to the council council can act on it within 30, 60 days. So we were told today by the architectural historian for the city, Daniel talked to him, that his name is Lambert Giesinger, and he said the goal of the city is before the year is out to have this fully implemented and adopted. So you don't have a lot of time, you got to move fast. So if you're going to the gentleman, make those suggestions at these hearings, and you got to see if if they have any traction.
No, right there.
Can you please
Question was, can I explain the difference between the BMO, the Baseline Mansionization Ordinance, and the HPOZ? So the difference is this: the Baseline Mansionization Ordinance has objective criteria built into it, meaning it says you can only build this many square feet based on ratios. You have to have setbacks. You have a height limit. Your lot coverage is limited. So you can actually design a house that meets those requirements and get a building permit. It does not require any review, any subjective review if you meet those requirements. If you want to exceed those requirements of the Baseline Mansionization Ordinance, you need to file for an adjustment or a variance, in which case it becomes a public hearing. Under the HPOZ, on the other hand, it's not an objective criteria that says this is it and you know it. It's basically what 5 people on the board think, what 5 people on the Cultural Heritage Commission think, what the director of planning thinks, and then if your neighbor disagrees and he thinks that your second story will block his view, he'll argue that you don't meet the integrity of the HPOZ, and that's appealable and on. So there's a huge difference in terms of something being objective versus subjective. And so as far as mansionization and making sure you don't have overbearing new construction, the Baseline Mansionization Ordinance is supposed to address that, and it does. It does limit certain things. So that's probably the solution for those who want to maintain order.
Gentleman back there. Speak up, please.
I'm a homeowner here too. Next to the two lovely people here, I'm not going to go in thirties. I redid my, I mean, the new space is the same. I tried to do my permit, and it said that it's not within the code, and you can get approved by the board. Yes.
Is there a question? Wait, excuse me. Is there a question you have?
Yes, it's more of a point. I went through the process of being approved. I got the letter of approval that is within guidelines. I took it, it was denied. I went to Paul Corretz, he says, it's denied, it's a little bit. I have a letter that says it. So the question is, can you within specific HPOZ and stick with that? The answer is no. You can't. That's why I'm here. It's frustrating.
Okay. Excuse me.
I think you can have discussions.
Yeah, we're not having. No, I understand that, but we've had. Okay. We don't want to get this thing to get out of hand, please. We're here. This is informational. That's what it's about. It's not a debate. It's informational. And so I'm going to take one more question. This gentleman right here has been waiting. And then, if you have a question, we will take it, Sam. I will.
I have actually two questions. First of all, in a situation like this, when you've got the homeowners versus the tract association, is that a difficult fight when you go to the city council?
That's a very subjective question. Is it difficult? I think the councilman has to decide which side he wants to support. So I can't give you an objective answer on that. Is it difficult or not? I think, by the way, you should definitely, as a community, go to the Property Owners Association of Holmby Hills and register your objections and deal with them, not ignore them.
Okay.
Well, then you should be raising that.
The lady back here who's been very patient. I'm going to.
I live in England 20 years. I changed my home 4 times, and I lived in a place that was all reserved. Every time I sold my home, I got twice the money I had to leave. So to me, this thing that you lose money to me is rubbish. In my life experience, every time I sold a home in that area, I received twice the money that I had spent. So I don't think I believe at all that this is true.
That's inflation.
Okay, well, perhaps they respect history.
All right. Well, thank you. You don't have a question? You have a question?
But yes, I have a question.
Yes, thank you.
There is a title.
Please, everybody, be respectful. What?
There is a title that you are a committee. Yes, a committee to
Yeah, yes.
represent or what have you. I want to know what it is committee, because I'm a member of the Homeowners Association, I know everything, they are members, they are neighbors, I know they want the same interests as mine. I only saw Mr. Reznik's name, who is not necessarily a neighbor, and who makes a living of helping people to do developments and people fighting.
Well, let me answer your question.
So I want to know who.
Yeah, let me answer your question. Thank you for the question. So I'm going to repeat the question. In summary, the question is, there's a homeowners association which many people belong to, some people and pay dues to, and she wants to know who the heck is this committee that has started this process? And I'm going to answer the question as best I can. The committee is a bunch of people that live in the neighborhood that do not want to have their values affected, that do not want to have people telling them how they can decide whether to take down a tree, decide whether to paint the color of their house differently. And those people, on an absolutely voluntary basis, no association, no absolute agenda other than the people want to stop an HPOZ. Now, the bottom line is that maybe there are people here that want an HPOZ, and that's fine. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. But the opinion of the small group that we put together that is trying to spearhead an incredibly difficult task with only weeks to go to try to stop something has put a lot of energy and effort together, as witnessed by a meeting like this, to put together a spearhead group to try to stop the HPOZ and stop the adoption. So whether we call ourselves a committee, or we call ourselves a group, or we call ourselves concerned citizens for our neighborhood, makes no difference whatsoever. One more question.
How many people on the association that are against, that want the HPOZ, are on that board, actually live in our neighborhood?
Yeah, well, I wish I knew the answer to that. I'm not privy to it. There are people that obviously live in the neighborhood. By the way, there are people on that board that are against the HPOZ, quite a few. So it's not everyone on that board is in favor of the HPOZ. Remember, the HPOZ was started many years ago. This board may not be the same board that was in place when the HPOZ was started. But whether they're in our neighborhood or not, really, again, as Ben said, the issue is not how it got here. It's a bad thing for people who don't want it, but it got here. Now, what do we do about it as homeowners if we don't want it? If you want it, you don't have to do anything, or you can go talk and say you do want it. But for those that don't want it, we need to do something about it. I really said that was the last question. I apologize to anybody who wasn't called on. And I want to again, before anybody leaves, first of all, I want to thank Ben Reznik again for his volunteering to come here. And by the way, no cost. And we need your support. We need your support. We need your support. Thank you.
What percentage of Koretz's district is our neighborhood?